So you've learnt the split stroke, the fan stroke and the triple. What next? In this video we're going to be taking a look at George Formby soloing, more specifically how to actually construct a solo, taking all the different techniques and putting them together to create something nice. Some of the things in this video apply to more general soloing in other forms of jazz, however I'll be talking about specific Formby techniques as a reference point. Soloing is often something that is an improvisation, something that you make up on the spot to show off your skills. Now, because it's an improvisation, because you make it up as you go along, it's very hard to teach exactly how to improvise, and it's something a lot of people, myself included at first, struggle with. While some people say it comes naturally to them, other people struggle with this, and this video is for those people who need a few ideas and a few guidelines and tips on how to get started. I'm going to use the song When I'm Cleaning Windows as an example, as a practice piece, where I will explore the various different things that you could do in a solo as a springboard to give you some ideas for your own playing. We're then going to listen to some George Formby solos from films and records, and you'll be able to hear and analyse what he does in his solos and the way he builds narratives within them. Finally, I'm going to give you some practice tips to help get you on your way to becoming a great player. When you listen to a George Formby solo, you'll notice that it's quite clearly an instrumental section of the previous song that Formby has sung, be it a single verse or a larger section. This is really common in jazz music. A lot of jazz is often just a repeated chorus that's repeated, first sung by a vocalist, and then all the other instrumentalists will solo over the top of the standard form. Now, Formby was a rhythm player, which means that he plays chords. This differs to lead playing, where you play sort of individual notes and riffs and things. So in the band The Beatles, for example, George was the lead player because he'd play riffs and he'd be playing more like this, whereas John Lennon was the rhythm player, where he played chords and did lots of strumming. Formby is a rhythm player, therefore, and rhythmic soloing is often more limited because we're playing chords. A lead soloist would have all these different notes and frets to choose from, and you can only use one or two at a time. So they've got so many more options because they've got all these frets available, whereas a rhythm player has to just stick to the chords that are making up the song. They have to be the same chords as the rest of the band, so the amount of expression and sort of other sort of variations and little extra tidbits and things that one can put in is quite limited because they've got to fit in with the overall structure. Therefore, most of the skill is in the right hand, where the rhythm is actually played, hence George Formby's famous strokes came about. The right hand is where most of the improvisation and variety comes from, exploring lots of different strumming patterns and techniques to create some interest and to show off his amazing skills. One of the most common pitfalls that I see players and students fall into is the speed at which the split stroke should be played. I've seen some people go at rapid speed, others too slowly. Let me explain how the split stroke fits in to a rhythmic structure. Let's look at When I'm Cleaning Windows. I have laid out the chords bar by bar at the top of the screen, and underneath it we have a demonstration of what I call one cycle of the split stroke. So this is where one round of the split stroke is completed before you go again. So you've got your down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up thing. Now for every bar, one cycle can occur. So in When I'm Cleaning Windows, the first four chords, which are one bar long each, mean that for every chord you play one cycle. Let's play along now. This ukulele, by the way, is tuned in C, G, C, E, A. Here we go. There's the first four bars. Okay, so we have the first four bars, each with one cycle of the split stroke. The next four bars, though, are a bit more problematic, however. Take a look at bar 6, where we have these very quick chord changes in the space of one bar. You have a C7, then a C6, and then a C again, all in the space of 4 beats. Now, a major rule, and you might like to write this down so you don't forget, that you can consider is that if there's a lot going on in one hand, then the other hand should be kept relatively simple. Because we have these very quick changes in the space of one bar, I would recommend playing straight down strums on each beat. After all, the rate of harmonic change is once a beat, so you can match up each strum with a different chord. The C7 has one strum, the C6 has one strum, and then that C at the end has two strums. Let me show you bar 6. So we have do it again. So our tempo is 1, 2, 3, 4, and each strum is on the beat, each chord changes on the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there we have bars 1 to 4 and bar 6. What I would be tempted to do in bar 5, in order to bridge the gap between the complex split stroke and the really simple down strums of bar 6, is to play a swung strumming pattern. After 4 bars of split stroke, your playing might sound a bit monotonous. This is another thing that I would recommend you write down. Don't play the split stroke for every single bar, as it will sound robotic and a bit dull. Instead, use everything sparingly. So after 4 bars of split, do something different. That would sound nice. We must also consider where we're going with the right hand in the next bar, those 4 down strums. The swung strum is a good in-between that makes everything flow nicely. We don't want any big pauses or gaps. The swung pattern is simply an up and down strum, but instead of playing it as a straight quaver, we delay the up strum by a tiny bit to create a sort of galloping rhythm. Da-da, 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 up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. Here's bars 1 to 6 so far. So we've had bars 1 to 6, we just need to complete the 8-bar section and then we've got the entire verse down. I personally would go back to the split stroke again. This is because we've had 2 bars of fairly simple rhythms, so it's nice to go back to something more complex. The simple rhythms give a nice break from the split stroke, which means when we use the split, it is more impactful. So the final version of that verse goes a bit like this. We can of course take this verse further though. Even after 4 bars of split stroke at the start, it's still a bit monotonous, so you can embellish it with decorations, such as the triple, fan, or the shake, or anything. Let's return to that single cycle of the split stroke and look at its component parts. The cycle is rhythmically split into groups of 3 plus 3 plus 2. We've got a down, up, down for the first group of 3, then another down, up, down for the second group of 3, and then the down, up for the final group of 2. A triplet is a form of syncopation where 3 strums occur in the space of 2. Therefore, if we take the last grouping, which is a grouping of 2, and instead play a triplet, you get this syncopated effect. Remember, the triplet must not extend the length of the bar. We still have the 3 plus 3 plus 2 rhythm, but where we would normally play 2 strums, we squeeze in 3 slightly shorter strums, which is what the triplet is. You therefore might like to take out the down up and replace it with a triplet where you feel it suits. You can also insert a fan stroke. A fan stroke has 3 parts to it as well, but the difference is that it isn't syncopated. Therefore the fan can fit easily into 2 groupings of 3. The fan is an especially impressive trick, so don't overplay it, or your party piece will soon lose its impact quickly. However, by the same token, playing the fan round and round and round for at least a good few seconds at a time is very impressive. There's a problem though. At the moment we can only play 2 fans before we must play that last grouping of 2, either as a normal strum, a triplet, or whatever. If we want to play the fan round and round and round multiple times, we are currently unable to. Therefore, we can rearrange the order of the components in 2 consecutive bars, so that the 2 groupings of 2 are either side of the 2-bar phrase, leaving 4 consecutive opportunities to play fans in the middle. Or, if you're really fancy, you can line up 4 bars and play fans through the bar lines. What this means is that you start with two normal groupings of three, but then you keep going with these groupings of three. You create a grouping of three out of the last two of one bar and the first strum of the next bar. This becomes syncopated, but it means by the time you get to the end of the fourth bar, you've completed your last fan right at the end of the bar, meaning you can return to the split in the next bar. If you stopped fanning in the middle of this 4-bar phrase, it would sound really weird and incomplete. For extended uses of the fan, such as this, you want to play pieces where there are not many chords happening in the left hand, such as the chorus of She's Got Two of Everything. The only chord in this song is an A7, so Formby and others can take the opportunity to play the fan round and round and round for this 4-bar phrase. Now in our When I'm Cleaning Windows example, this does not apply. The chords don't last very long in this song. But then again, you wouldn't want to play everything in every song, because then there's no variety. So perhaps you wouldn't necessarily put too much fan in, although of course you can experiment and try putting in little short bursts of the fan where you please. Let me play you the same verse of Windows again, but with a few triplets and fans added in. Notice that when I play each of the decorations, I am sacrificing a component of the split stroke in order to fit it in. There is, of course, more that we can do. That verse that we've just spent the last however long constructing is just one 8-bar section. Now we need to think about the wider context of the entire solo. In the solo for Windows we have 2 verses, a chorus, and a verse again. Each verse should sound different. The same chord progression repeated gives a player an opportunity to explore different things in the right hand, showing a broad range of skills that can be done over the same chords. The best way to structure what you do in the right hand therefore comes down to the art of slowly building up complexity, interest and skill. You don't want to show off everything you can do right at the start, because then the rest of the solo is boring. Now the degree in skill that you have, personally, will affect the extent to which you can build up to in the climax. But here is what I would do when I perform this song. Normally the verse that I just taught you would actually be the second verse. This is because it has a nice balance of split stroke and some simpler things too. The first verse is often, I find, an opportunity to mix the split stroke with some more simple strums. This creates a smooth transition from the simple strums when you're singing, and sort of teases and hints at what's to come later in the solo with the odd splash of the split stroke here and there. So my first verse might sound a bit like this. Now, because I'm doing less with the right hand, it's more just sort of swung rhythms with the occasional split thrown in. This means we can do a lot more with the left hand. Now I said earlier that when one hand is doing something complex, the other one should be left as simple as possible. Well, the reverse is true as well. While we're doing simpler strumming patterns, we can sort of play about with what we can do with our left hand. While we can't change the fundamental chord, we can add some more melodic ideas that give some interest. Look at Formby's solos in films and clips, and you'll notice that there are a lot of pinky extensions to the 3rd, 4th and 5th frets. When he does this, he's adding extra notes to the chord that will harmonise well with the chord that he's already playing. So with a C7, Formby taps the 3rd fret where the note is a C. The C obviously sits well in the C7 chord. The same is true of an F chord, where you can tap on the 3rd fret of the A string, getting the C. The C note is part of the 3-note triad that forms an F chord. On a D7, Formby extends to the 5th fret, where a D note lives. Obviously the D fits into the D7, and so on. When deciding what to tap and extend to, you must make sure that the note fits within the chord. So, for example, A7, our only option within reach is the 4th fret, the C sharp. The C sharp makes up the A7 chord, so you wouldn't want to go to the C or the D, either side of it, because then the chords just wouldn't mix well. That said, you can go to the B, although the B isn't in the A7 chord. It's still a nice extension that we can consider. At the end of the day, it's up to you though what you want to do. I would recommend taking the time to practice this in isolation, away from playing any formal solos. Take a chord and experiment how far your pinky stretches and which frets sound good and which don't. Make a mental note of this, and this is something that you can incorporate into your soloing, depending on what you think sounds nice. Remember that all this tapping happens on the A string only, the top string, the physically closest to the floor string. Some tapping in the first verse I might look like this. So I was doing more tapping with the left hand and keeping the right hand relatively simple. Of course, the exact tapping that you do is up to your own discretion. For the chorus, we have something new. We've got new chords. These particular examples are great for tapping and extending too. The main thing, though, about this chorus is that each chord lasts for 2 bars at a time, rather than 1, as in the verse. This means there's less going on in the left hand, and there is space for development in the right hand. It's a good idea to make each bar different. So for each pair, you could start with a swung strum in the first bar before tapping and splitting in the second bar, for example. That would look something like this. Alternatively, you can try different positions of the same chord. What this means is that, well, every chord has more than one position. That isn't the only way to play an E7. You can also play an E7 like that. It's like the D7 shape, but you slide it up. So you're on frets 4 and 5. Likewise, there's another A7 position, which looks like that. You take a G7, and then you slide it up to, and then you can add your thumb, or you can do a G7 with these 3 fingers and leave this one alone. Slide it up to, and then add that one there. D7 can also be played like that, or like that. And G7, or even if you want to be really fancy, it's that D7 shape again, sliding all the way up to that one. These different positions give you some scope for experimentation and variety. So you could do something like something like that. Something else we could do as well is add some transitionary chords. Now, because these chords last 2 bars instead of 1, as per the verses, we can play about with the harmony. Now, you don't want to be going about sort of actually changing the chord, so you don't want to go from E7 to, say, I don't know, a B flat 7 or something. But what you can do is add very short-lasting transitionary chords that, while they're not in the key and they won't sound good, they only last for such a short amount of time that the effect they have on the listener is more of a sort of cool transition rather than the actual chord itself. Let me explain. So when I'm cleaning when it's in the key of C. Now in the C major scale we only have all the white notes, all the alphabet notes, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We've got no sharps or flats. But something that George Formby does is when he goes to a D7 chord, he often slides up to the D7 from the D flat 7 below. Now this happens very quickly. Let me give you an example. Did you see it? See, it's a very quick... Now normally the D flat 7 chord does not fit in the key of C on its own. It doesn't really have a sort of a nice harmonic effect. That would be if the chord was left to hang for as long as any other chord. Just not quite right. But because the D flat 7 is just played very quickly, the the listener doesn't really have time to notice or register that we're hearing a chord that doesn't work in the key. Instead, we just get this really cool sort of sliding effect. So, as I said, the chord acts more as a sort of an effect rather than the chord itself. I hope that makes sense. And you can apply the same sort of principle to lots of other chords as well. You can sort of, if you take this E7, you might go... And you can slide in the other direction too. So for G7, you might want to go... Something a bit like that. Again, it just creates some more interest and adds some spice, if you like, to your harmony without detracting from the overall chord progression. So those are some sliding transitions you can do. Now I'm going to talk about one more type of transition. Bear with me, but this is going to get a bit technical. Something we can do when going from chord 4 to chord 1 is play the sharp 4 diminished 7 chord as a transitionary chord. So we're not talking about the sliding, we're talking about a new chord. Again, it lasts for such a short amount of time that its effect is more prominent than the chord itself, but it's another type of transition that isn't a slide, it's an actual new chord. Let me explain. So in a piece of music that's in a key, all the chords that are in that music can be given a numerical value that relates to the tonic. So in the key of C, the tonic, chord 1, is C. And we identify all the other chords by just counting alphabetically through the scales. So C, D, E, F. So chord 4 is F in the key of C. Likewise, in the key of F, chord 4 is F, G, A, B flat. So we have those two chords. Now those two chords don't appear consecutively in When I'm Cleaning Windows, but there are other songs like Little Ukulele or Lamppost or something where they might appear, and you can use this technique. So what you do, the transitionary chord, you take the 4 chord, so in the key of C it's F, you raise it by a semitone, so you make it a sharp, so F goes to F sharp. And then you make it a diminished 7 chord. And then you just put that chord in between F and C. I'll do it in the key of F as well. It creates a nice link between the two chords. You can find out the sharp 4 diminished 7 chord by just googling. So you're in the key of, I don't know, say you're in the key of G. Well, chord 4 of G is C, so we know that for the sharp 4 diminished 7 chord we need C sharp diminished 7. If you don't know what that is, just Google C sharp diminished 7 and it'll come up as a ukulele chord online somewhere. This type of transition, as I said, it's a bit technical and I hope I haven't lost you. Maybe if we rewatch this section of the video if you're still a bit sort of overwhelmed. But it's a really, really common type of transition in both classical and jazz music. I mean, it really is something that's really commonly used, and it's a great way to add in extra chords, add in extra interest without detracting from the overall effect of the basic harmony too much. We now have 2 verses and a chorus done. We just got to discuss the climax of the solo. Now, contrary to what you might expect, the climax actually happens just before the end of a piece, rather than at the very end itself. It's like an action film, where the last big chase happens, but afterwards there's a few moments of resolution and reflection, even if it only lasts a few seconds or minutes. You've got to let the roller coaster come back down after reaching its peak, so to speak. When I perform Windows, typically, it's in the middle of a set where I only play 2 or 3 Formby songs. Therefore, because I'm only playing 3 solos in the entire 45-minute or an hour-long concert, I'll really go to town with the last verse, maybe fanning on the first line of the verse, putting in tapping, fanning, triplets, transitions, really cramming it all in. With so much going on, it creates a wonderful spectacle to watch and to listen to, not forgetting to leave the last 2 or 3 bars though to be more simple, just like plain splitting or even swung strumming. Ending the solo with simple strumming is especially important if the solo is in the middle of the song, as is the case with Windows, as ending with more simple strumming mirrors the smooth transition between solo and song that we had at the beginning of the solo. As I said, I usually only play about 3 George Formby songs in a set list at a gig, where I'll be playing dozens of other songs by other artists as well. Therefore, I only have 3 opportunities to do George Formby solos, so when I'm performing those songs, I like to make the solos as technical and as impressive as possible. Likewise, when you're on the stage at the Blackpool George Formby Society convention, where you only have 2 songs, again you want to make both solos count. However, if you're doing a concert where you're playing upwards of 8 songs, maybe in a half-hour set, or if you're performing 4 times over the weekend at the George Formby Society, you're going to really struggle to impress over a longer period of time if you make your first solos too sort of exciting and interesting. You don't want to peak too early, so if you've got a longer set, you've got more songs to cover, then something to consider when you're improvising is maybe leaving some interest towards the end. Start off with your second most impressive song, then sort of go down a bit, maybe just some more basic things, then come back up towards the end with a great finale, showing off lots of fans and things. That's just something to consider when you're improvising solos. If I was to play a longer concert where I'm doing a whole half hour of Formby songs and I put When I'm Cleaning Windows at the start or towards the middle, I wouldn't make the solo as technically complex as I would if Windows was only one of 3 Formby songs in a set full of completely other artists' music thrown in as well. Remember, when I'm only playing 3 songs, I like to take each opportunity to play as best I can, because that's my only opportunity, a limited opportunity, to show off my Formby skills. But in that longer concert, I would leave my more impressive skills towards the end. You've got to really think about the sort of progression and narrative of the set list that you're performing. And therefore, it's good to be able to improvise more complex and more simple solos over the same song. Now we're going to listen to some Formby music. I can only play short snippets of songs due to copyright reasons, but I'll leave links in the description below where you can find the full recordings and versions of these songs. First, let's listen to Formby's Windows solo from 1937. Note how in the first verse there is relatively less splitting than in the second, showing his build-up. In the chorus, listen to the tapping and how the frets he taps on change between the bars. He also mixes up the various components of the cycle, as well as adding in a few little tricks here and there. Let's now look at another Formby solo, breaking it down. The film version of Mr. Woo's A Window Cleaner now has 2 solos, but we'll treat them as one. Listen to how little splitting there is in the first solo. Formby treats us to brief bursts, but as a general rule he refrains from playing too much. Then later he goes into a fast solo where there's the odd shake, the odd changing of components, but the climax is when he really starts doing the slides and things with the D7 in the left hand. He then plays a typical ending, showing a predictable and easy, comforting way to end the solo. Therefore the climax was at the D7, and the sort of coming back down again is in that typical ending that everybody knows, the A flat 7 to G7 to C. Now, when Formby went to do his solos on his films and in the recording studio, it's very unlikely that he sat down and went through the solos bar by bar like we've been doing in this video. Instead, he would have just let his instincts come to him and he would play whatever he wanted. I reckon that even if he wasn't consciously aware of what he was doing, there was a subconscious instinct that made him decide that he wanted to start his solos sort of more simply and then build up in intensity as it goes through. Therefore, some good players, who often find these things come naturally to them, happen to have the same subconscious instincts of starting simple and building in complexity. For those who these instincts don't come so naturally to them, this is why we have to do the things that we've been looking at in this video, sort of deconstructing examples to then give you ideas and inspiration for future playing. For those people, you'll have to insert more structure and method into your practice. It might take a little longer, but once you start to understand how solos sort of work and the forms of them, I think that your instincts will sort of program themselves into becoming more akin to what is considered optimum. Therefore, my final and perhaps most important tip of this video is on practice. What I would recommend is you take the same solo, such as when I'm cleaning windows, and with each time you play it, have a different focus. So what I mean by this is perhaps you play the solo once through, trying to fit in as much split stroke as possible. The next time, focus on doing fans. The next time, triplets, maybe varying up all the different strumming patterns, putting things in different orders. Each time you play the solo, have a specific goal and trying to do one or two things. Don't overcomplicate it. Then, once you've got a bit more sort of successful with the techniques, play it again, but with no goals. This time you should just let the techniques come to you and you can play what you feel like playing on the spur of the moment. This is how to practice improvisation. You've already got your toolkit full of tools and techniques and things that you've practiced, and now you're sort of practicing applying them in an improvisatory way. This will take time, of course, and lots of experimentation, lots of failures, but lots of picking yourself up again and having another go at it. But I believe that this is the best way to teach yourself how to structure a solo. Focus on specific things each time you play the same solo, and then once you feel comfortable with those things, play the solo with just the goal of making it sound good. Therefore, when it comes to performing, you'll have built up a toolkit of lots of different tricks and licks and things that you can do and fills that you can apply on the spur of the moment. Learning to improvise and play naturally is a really hard thing to master for any musician who is focusing on improvisation, whether that be in the classical, jazz, rock or folk traditions. An extra tip I would give you is to try and learn the chords off by heart. Through repetition you'll do this anyway, but it really helps if you know the chords off by heart, so you're not staring at a piece of paper. Your focus when you look at the piece of paper isn't on the right hand, it's on the chords. So get those chords embedded in your mind and then you can really focus on the right hand. I hope this video's given you some ideas from which you can springboard off of and create your own solos. If you've got any more questions, please do leave them in the comments below. I will do my best to answer as many as I can. I do also offer private one-to-one lessons as well, where I can teach you so much more than a simple single video like this will be able to. I already have a couple of students with whom I look at Formby specific work, so each lesson will look at improving the quality of your intonation or the quality of the strokes in the right hand. We'll have tailored lessons that suit what you need to learn and what you want to learn, so that we can get you being the best player in no time at all. We can build a relationship, whether online or in person, and I can give you my uninterrupted attention so that we can work on your skills and make you the best player possible. Please do consider booking a lesson with me. You can either commit to regular lessons or just have 1 or 2 sessions with me. My contact details can be found on my website www.matthewquilliam.co.uk. Go to the tuition and workshops page to find out more. Alternatively, you can still support me by liking this video and subscribing to this YouTube channel. It really helps me get new videos out to give you more free tips and advice. I also upload to this channel performance videos, exclusive recordings, as well as back catalogue performances that I've filmed at concerts from a few years ago. But I upload more tuition videos and theory things as well, which you might be interested to check out, so make sure you're definitely subscribed so you don't miss out. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you find the things in this useful, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.